If I asked you to picture Ireland, you'd probably reach for something gentle. Green fields, a pint of Guinness, poets, rain, and a friendly little country that spent most of its history poor. One of the places people left, not the place they arrived. Hold on to that picture, because the real story is almost the opposite of it. Over the last 30 years, this small, once poor island quietly turned itself into one of the richest countries on the planet. It didn't strike oil or build some world-beating industry of its own. It did it with a lever most people never think of as a weapon: tax. Ireland made itself the most attractive address on earth for the profits of the world's biggest companies: Apple, Google, Microsoft, Pfizer, pulling tens of billions in taxable profit, and the jobs that come with it, away from far larger economies. Its critics have a blunt word for what it did. They call it theft. So how does a country get rich by becoming a doorway for other countries' money? Is stealing jobs from the world actually fair? Or just what winning looks like when you're small? And now that the giants want it all back, what happens to a prosperity built on being the place the money merely passes through? Let's deconstruct it. To understand the trick, you have to start with how badly Ireland needed one. Because for most of the 20th century, Ireland wasn't a success story. It was a cautionary tale. And that desperation is the whole reason for everything that came after. In the 1980s, Ireland was one of the poorest countries in Western Europe. Unemployment ran near 17%, and its brightest young people emigrated in enormous numbers because there was nothing for them at home. Economists openly called it the sick man of Europe. It had no oil, no coal, no great manufacturing base, and it sat on the cold edge of the continent, far from where the money was. A country like that has almost no levers to pull. But it had one. That lever was tax. Ireland decided that if it couldn't win on size, resources, or location, it would win on being the cheapest place in the developed world for a corporation to book its profits. It set its corporate tax rate at 12.5%, a fraction of the 35% companies faced in America, or the higher rates across Europe. It was a deliberate, audacious bet. Make the country so cheap to be taxed in that the world's biggest companies couldn't afford to say no. The first time I really sat with the numbers here, the logic felt backwards. Ireland's plan was to charge companies less tax than almost anyone else, and end up collecting more of it. That shouldn't work. It worked because a thin slice of the entire world's profits is worth vastly more than a thick slice of one small country's. A low tax rate on its own doesn't build a miracle. Plenty of tiny tax havens stay tiny and irrelevant. What turned Ireland's bet into a genuine transformation was that the companies didn't just send their profits. They sent real operations, real buildings, and hundreds of thousands of real jobs. That distinction is the most important thing in this whole story. It's exactly what the angry version leaves out. Apple arrived first, opening a facility in Cork back in 1980. Then came the rest in a wave. Google, Microsoft, Meta, Pfizer, and dozens more built their European headquarters on Irish soil. And it wasn't only the tax. Ireland spoke English, the natural landing pad for American firms wanting a European base. It sat inside the European Union and later the Euro, so a company there could sell freely into a market of hundreds of millions. And it had spent years building an educated, relatively young workforce. The low tax was the hook, but the country behind it was real. The result was the Celtic Tiger, one of the fastest national transformations in modern history. In a single generation, Ireland went from one of Western Europe's poorest countries to one of its richest. Today, American multinationals directly and indirectly employ around 375,000 people there, roughly 1 in 7 of everyone working in the country. Those are not paper jobs. That is a real economy, built on a foundation the rest of the world would soon start calling something far less flattering. Because underneath the real jobs and the gleaming headquarters, something else was going on. Something with far less to do with Ireland and far more to do with the rest of the world's tax bills. This is the actual trick. And once you see how it worked, you can't unsee it in the products you own. If you're enjoying this one, a quick subscribe means the next breakdown just lands in your feed. Anyway. For years, Ireland hosted one of the most effective tax avoidance structures ever built, nicknamed the Double Irish. Here's the shape of it. A giant American company ran its non-American sales, every iPhone sold in Germany, every ad bought in France, through an Irish subsidiary. But it also set up a second Irish company, controlled on paper from a tax haven like Bermuda, and parked the rights to its brands and technology there. The Irish sales company then paid enormous royalties to that offshore company for using those brands, and the profit earned right across Europe flowed out of Ireland into a haven, taxed at close to nothing. And this is the part that quietly touches you. The phone in your hand, the searches you run, the software you work in. For years, the profit those companies made from you, wherever you live, was very likely routed through this exact structure. If you're in Britain, Germany, or France, some of the tax that might have funded your own country's roads or hospitals didn't go missing. It went to Dublin, and often straight through it. How well did it work? At the sharpest end, Apple's effective tax rate on its European profits fell to a barely believable 0.005%. For every million euros of profit, it paid around 50 euros in tax. Not 50,000, 50. Multiply that across dozens of the largest companies on Earth, and the real scale comes into view. Ireland had made itself a financial airlock, the place the world's corporate profits paused briefly on the way to being taxed almost nowhere at all. So Ireland got rich. But money like that doesn't come from nowhere. Every euro of profit booked in Dublin was a euro earned somewhere else. Which raises the uncomfortable question at the center of this story. If Ireland was collecting the tax, who was losing it? The answer, its critics argue, is almost everyone else. When a company sells billions of euros of products across Germany, France, and Britain, but arranges for the profit to legally land in Ireland, the tax those larger countries might have collected never arrives. For years, France and Germany accused Ireland of tax dumping, undercutting its neighbors to pull their profits, headquarters, and jobs across the sea. In 2016, this collided with the law. The European Commission ruled Ireland's arrangement with Apple was illegal state aid and ordered Apple to hand Ireland 13 billion euros in back taxes, with interest, closer to 14. And here's the detail that tells you everything. Ireland fought the ruling. A country running hospitals and schools spent 8 years in court trying to refuse a 14 billion euro windfall, because taking it meant admitting the model was a scam, and the model was worth far more than the money. In 2024, Europe's highest court ruled against them, and Ireland had to take it. Now, here's where I want to be straight with you, because this is genuinely contested ground, and this channel will always tell you when it is. I don't think theft is quite the right word. Nobody forced Germany or America to keep their rates high, or stop them competing. They simply chose not to, and the jobs Ireland built are real. But the innocent version its defenders tell doesn't sit right either. A structure engineered to tax profit at 0.005% stretches the word competition past breaking point, and it worked by quietly shifting the cost onto everyone else. The honest answer sits in the uncomfortable middle. That single case, dragged out over 8 years, exposed the whole game. Ireland's prosperity had never rested purely on what Ireland made or did. A large part of it rested on tax revenue, quietly redirected away from the rest of the world. And the rest of the world had finally noticed. For decades, Ireland got away with it because the countries losing out couldn't agree on how to stop it. That's no longer true. Right now, the entire foundation of the Irish model is being pulled apart from 2 directions at once, and Ireland may not be able to hold off either of them. The first blow came from the world finally coordinating. In 2021, around 140 countries agreed a global minimum corporate tax of 15%, built specifically to end the race to the bottom Ireland had won. And Ireland reluctantly gave up the 12.5% rate that had defined it for a generation. The second blow comes from Washington. The Trump administration has launched sweeping tariffs and is pushing hard to bring American companies, and crucially, their intellectual property, back home. And that is the one thing Ireland cannot survive, because of a number most Irish people would rather not think about. Ireland's corporate tax has become dangerously concentrated. In 2025, it collected nearly 33 billion euros in corporation tax, about a third of all the tax the state takes in. But just 3 companies now account for close to half of that, and 10 pay well over half. Strip the multinationals out of the budget, and Ireland's healthy surplus flips into a deficit of around 14 billion euros. And here's what honestly worries me, and what I can't tell you. Nobody, not me, not the Irish government, knows how much of this is real and how much is a mirage that could vanish with a signature. If 2 or 3 executives in Silicon Valley decide, or are pushed, to move their profits home, a huge slice of a wealthy nation's budget could simply evaporate. How exposed Ireland really is depends on decisions in boardrooms and the White House that nobody in Dublin controls. That is an extraordinary way to run a country. So Ireland finds itself somewhere strange and precarious. By the numbers, one of the richest countries in the world, yet its wealth rests on the goodwill of a handful of foreign firms and a US government that increasingly wants that money back. The trick worked brilliantly for a long time. The trouble with being a doorway is that someone else always owns the building. In 2015, Ireland's economy grew, on paper, by an astonishing 26% in a single year. Not because the country had become a quarter more productive, but because Apple had shifted a mountain of intellectual property onto its books. The number was so absurd that the economist Paul Krugman mocked it as leprechaun economics, and Ireland's own statisticians quietly stopped using GDP to describe their economy. It was the perfect symbol, a nation's prosperity inflated by accounting, floating free of anything real. So here's where I land. Ireland's miracle isn't really the story of a small country outworking the world. It's the most successful act of tax arbitrage in modern history. For 30 years, Ireland borrowed a slice of everyone else's tax base and called it success. And to be fair, it used the proceeds to build a richer, more modern country. But the lease is now being torn up by a world tired of paying for it and a Washington that wants its companies back. And that's the thing I keep coming back to, my friends. It is a very strange feeling to be one of the richest countries on earth and not be sure how much of it was ever really yours. When the profits that were only ever passing through finally stop, the question Ireland has to answer is what, underneath it all, it actually built for itself. Ireland's whole story is a small country that made itself indispensable to the giants of the world, and got rich standing in the middle of their money. But there's another small island that pulled off something even more audacious, and it's every bit as fascinating. This island didn't make itself the place the world's profits pass through. It made itself the place the world's technology is physically built, to the point where one company on it now manufactures around 90% of the most advanced computer chips on Earth. Your phone, your car, the entire AI boom, all of it depends on this one island. And just like Ireland, it's now finding out how dangerous it is to build your whole future on being needed by people far more powerful than you. That's Taiwan. And the video breaks down how it took control of the world's most important industry and why that control might not save it. It's on the channel.